Hello, and welcome to the City of San Marcos presentation on CDBG Disaster Recovery Infrastructure Program. Back in 2015, the City of San Marcos experienced two historic flood events that accounted for immense damages to homes and businesses in the community, severely impacting the recovery and the growth potential for the City of San Marcos. The devastation brought by these two floods prompted the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, to allocate around $33 million to the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Fund to assist with ongoing recovery needs. As you can see here, what's modeled in the video shows the progression of one of the flood events in just one of the areas that it covers. If you're in Texas in 2015, chances are you were impacted by these floods, even if you weren't in the floodplain as these areas were. The CDBG team here at City of San Marcos is dedicated to ensuring the funds from this program are used in an efficient way to serve the community for its purpose. Jacque Thomas and myself, Justin Holder, are just two of the members of the CDBG team. We're the engineers handling the oversight of disaster recovery and mitigation infrastructure projects and work alongside others here at the City of San Marcos to make sure the program runs smoothly. Through this presentation, I'll talk about our experience in the program and what our role means. So here's a brief overview of how the disaster recovery funds ultimately reach the City of San Marcos. First, the disaster has to occur. For us, it was the 2015 floods, but it can be any major event such as an earthquake, fire, storm, etc. Then, the President declares this a major disaster. FEMA then responds. FEMA is only typically able to respond to immediate needs such as evacuation, debris removal, and in some cases, basic infrastructure restoration. Congress, recognizing this, allocates additional funds to HUD for their distribution. HUD then calculates and announces the available allocations. They post these notices for the available grants in the Federal Register. This allows eligible states, cities, and counties to apply for these grants. HUD then awards funds to state and local governments. The state and local governments administer the grant program directly based on their individual needs and capabilities. And that's where we come in. At the local government level, the infrastructure projects go through this basic timeline. First, the needs of the community have to be assessed. From this, an official action plan is developed. We then enter the project implementation. This is the bulk of time for the project, which covers scheduling, design, environmental, permitting, utility coordination, bidding, and construction. Throughout the process, needs are constantly reassessed, and if any budgeting or major scheduling needs change, an amendment has to be made to the action plan. Finally, the grant is closed out once all funds have been expended and the projects are completed. Step 1 is the needs assessment. In order to handle this, the city awarded AECOM the infrastructure feasibility study. This identified and prioritized infrastructure projects in the city that were eligible for DR funding. Using 2D modeling, AECOM studied the causes for the flooding. In their findings, they determined that both existing infrastructure and proposed solutions cannot handle the 100-year regional flooding with local solutions. However, they can handle local flooding and reduce the impacts of regional flooding. The funds allocated from the grant would not be able to cover all the costs for every infrastructure project, and therefore certain factors determined the initial prioritization of projects. Among these were low to mid-income areas, flood risk reduction, good cost-benefit ratios, permitting schedules, mobility improvement, and environmental impact. From this, a prioritization matrix was established, ranking each of the projects based on this criteria. From these rankings, 5 projects were ultimately determined to be at the top prioritization: Midtown, Lincoln Gardens, Clairwood and Barbara, Bank and Trail Improvements, and Euland Road. Take a look at some of these numbers and projects, because they will change as we go along. The next step in the process is developing the action plan. This lays out the path ahead for budget, timeline, policies and procedures, and prioritization. This is not just for infrastructure projects, but for the entire CDBG DR program as a whole. It includes housing, infrastructure, economic revitalization, and any additional hazard mitigation. Here's a look at the needs assessment as established by the action plan. If you'll notice, between housing and infrastructure, $62 million was estimated to be needed. We were allocated $33,794,000. Therefore, we need to prioritize where this money needs to be spent. So, what do? Well, we go back to the prioritization matrix, where we establish which projects take precedent over others. So, I know I mentioned that we had $33 million to spend for this program. And although infrastructure is the majority of this expenditure, it's not the only one. We also have administration, planning, and housing, all extremely important aspects to the whole program. Even though I don't have quite enough time today to speak in detail about the housing portion of the DR program, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention it. There's a whole other team dedicated to running this portion of the grant to handle single-family rehab and reconstruction, single-family reimbursement, rental rehab and reconstruction, and the Public Housing Authority. Well, now that we've established the action plan, budgeting, and the projects that we're going to do, let's get into the meat of the subject, the projects. One of the most important things we can do at the city is establish policies and procedures that we have to abide by. We have policies and procedures for every step of the process: procurement, national objectives, duplication of benefits, risk analysis, timesheets, cost reasonableness, environmental assessment, project design, acquisition, bidding, construction, and closeout. These ensure we go through the steps that are necessary to complete the project and do it the correct way, and record every single thing we're doing, and so it can be repeated. Each infrastructure project has to go through these major steps when going through the program. The first step is procurement. In this step, we select the engineer and their subconsultants that are best qualified for the individual project. This selection is based on many things, such as qualification ranking, availability, and familiarity of a certain site area. The next step in the process is preliminary engineering, report, and design. In this step, we identify detailed needs, surveys, permits, utility conflicts, and establish the realistic expectations for the project going forward. Then we have the environmental assessment, full design that includes 30, 60, 90, and 100% modeling and construction plans. Then we go into acquisition and relocations, bidding, then full construction, and finally closeout. Here are the projects that are currently in design. First, we have Ulan Road, which is designed by Fries and Nichols. Midtown, designed by K. Fries and Associates. Blanco Gardens, designed by Jacque Consulting. And Blanco Riverine, designed by Haft Associates. Take some time to look at the major improvements and budgets associated with each of these projects. Ulan Road will be the first project that will be completed and has been our guinea pig for the whole process. Thank God for Kirk Abbott here at the city because he has set the precedent for how to organize and develop the regulations for the infrastructure projects. Ulan focuses on installing new trunk lines and inlets in the neighborhood and replacing existing drainage infrastructure. Water quality measures are also to be installed with this project and exploring a future methodology for future San Marcos capital improvement projects. The reconstruction of roads and expanding pedestrian facilities will also have significant impact on the drainage in this community for recovery efforts. Midtown was the top-ranked project on the prioritization matrix. It sets to utilize and improve upon an existing TxDOT drainage channel, upsize culvert crossings, and apply curb cuts and inlets to more efficiently drain water from the highway. This project also creates a new channel to serve existing and future conveyance for developments in the area. Blanco Gardens handles the stormwater in the heart of the flooding from 2015. It proposes culvert crossings across River Road to effectively convey water to the river and replaces and proposes new storm drains and inlets within the neighborhood. A diversion channel along Animal Shelter Road conveys large amounts of water in major storm events to greatly reduce the risk of flooding. River Road will be regraded to efficiently convey water in storm events to upgrade infrastructure. The neighborhood alleys will also be cleaned and reimagined to provide relief for the residents. Blanco Riverine sets to implement near-term solutions to riverine flooding in the community. The major improvements include multiple berms that are set throughout the neighborhood, a relief channel, and string bank stabilization. Being such a hefty project, the largest hurdle right now is acquiring land in order to build the berms and the channel for this area. Therefore, the DR funds for this project are solely dedicated to the acquisition of property. The design fees are funded by the Texas Water Development Board, and construction is projected to be funded by future CDBG mitigation programs. Within the design process, we have the environmental assessment. This breaks down every environmental impact that can be associated within the site. Within the EA is permitting for national and statewide permits. These can vary for each project. In addition, notification and coordination to Native tribes, federal, state, and public entities has to occur. Once all this is complete, and a finding of no significant impact or proper mitigation is established, we are able to finally get a release of funds that will allow the city to spend money on acquisition and construction activities. Next in the process is coordinating utility conflicts. In the design phase, subsurface utility engineering work is done alongside survey to identify where conflicts occur. From this, franchise utilities are identified and 120-day notices are sent to each entity. While not always the case, engineers from each franchise utility designs and contracts out the work to be done. The consultant and city staff have to coordinate with these design efforts. Assuming the release of funds has been issued, acquisition and relocation is the next step. If the infrastructure project is within private property, in order for the design to work, the city will have to work with property owners to negotiate acquisition of easements or in some cases, full takeover of the property. If homeowners are affected, they may have to be relocated and compensated accordingly. In the case a deal can't be made, eminent domain and supplemental legal action will have to take place. As you may have already assumed, based on all the dominoes that have to fall into place of all the aspects that go into these projects, scheduling is key. Each project has their own proprietary schedule that has to be maintained almost constantly. With a final closeout date of December 9th, 2022, we have to be on top of these schedules at all times. Here's a look at where we are with each project as of today. Once the project has been designed, utility conflicts are coordinated, and acquisitions are in place, the project is able to be advertised for bidding. The DR program uses a sealed bid method, having competitive bids from qualified construction companies. The lowest qualified bid is then awarded to the contract. Now we come to the fun part, construction of the project. We can see all the work come to fruition. The city staff and design engineer is responsible for reviewing the construction activities in relation to the design. We also have to handle any change services that may occur in the field. With this, flexibility is key since there is a hard deadline for the work and budgets cannot be blown. Once construction is complete, we enter the closeout phase of the program. Closeout can only occur once funds are expended or the remaining funds are returned. In addition, reporting of accomplishments and performance measures have to take place to execute the closeout agreement. As I mentioned before, Jacque and I are not the only two members of this team. We have a multitude of staff assisting with running this program to handle all aspects of the financials, review, coordination, and major decision making here in San Marcos. HUD has been a great resource to us, and these projects cannot be accomplished without the hard work behind the consultants designing and constructing the work who get to deal with us every single day. Together, we are able to serve the community with these grants and look forward to seeing their impact. If there's only one thing I can take away from this process, it's to document everything. If you aren't aware, these grants are being federally funded, which means they're subject to regular auditing and public information. Although sound decision making is always expressed, being in the public eye, it is vital to have the procedures in place for every single aspect of the project. We live by schedules here. As I'm sure you know, infrastructure projects change, but grant deadlines do not. It makes everyone involved flexible and innovative with how time and money is spent and how prioritized very quickly. Just remember, someone, somewhere has probably done this before, so use your resources and improve on past experiences. So with this, Jacque and I will open it up for questions.